Yeah, Aggie's here, but you haven't seen her. She's under the desk. There's a heat vent right there, and she's like face right up against it. Hi everyone, Kate here, and today we're going to be discussing some quickly made patterns from the 1920s and 30s. While I do typically focus more on lotions and potions on my channel, I do get a lot of requests for more fashion and sewing content, as well I've gotten a few requests for knitting content because I'm a fairly avid knitter. I'm always wearing a lot of my knitwear. So as I'm not feeling 100% today, some of you might know this already, but I took a vacation in January. With a plan of having half vacation, half getting caught up on everything, getting ahead, and I ended up sick with you know what, which is just my luck. Every time I take a holiday, I get sick and I don't enjoy it. It's a conspiracy, I tell you. Now, when it comes to my own garment making, I generally prefer garments that are quickly made. I have a lot of health problems, which limit how much energy and how much time I can really put towards my creative pursuits. Therefore, I like clothing patterns that are efficient. Things that look really good, look interesting, but are also quickly made, so I can get the most sort of bang for the buck. I want a very attractive garment for minimal effort, which, I mean, I'm sure even if you're not chronically ill, you can relate to wanting to make something quickly and still have a good result. While in earlier decades, garments tended to be much more complex in nature, by the 1920s and 30s, there was an explosion of simple patterns aimed at beginner seamstresses. Knitting seems to have had a bit of a resurgence in popularity as well. I'm not sure if that's because a lot of women would have started knitting because of the war effort and just kept it up perhaps because they enjoyed it. That's purely speculation on my part. I haven't really researched that, so take that with a grain of salt. I have read in pre-war publications that knitting was considered to be rather old-fashioned in comparison to the much trendier crochet, which is kind of like opposite to what it is now. But such sentiments are certainly not present in the many patterns available from after this time period. In my humble opinion, the 1930s was probably the peak of knitwear patterns. You had a lot of nice stuff in the 40s, but the 30s? Fabulous. Now today, as I mentioned, I'm going to be reviewing 4 patterns, 2 sewing patterns and 2 knitting patterns that are at least supposed to be super speedy. The first 2 I'm going to be discussing are fairly well known amongst the vintage community, and then the other 2 I'm picking are ones that I haven't heard talked about. All of these patterns I've made at least once, so I can give you like an actual thorough review. I have made them all. So without any further ado, let's discuss some patterns. Let's start off with perhaps the most famous of the speedy patterns, the 1-hour dress. Now there's a ton of information both on YouTube and the internet in general on how to make this dress, so I won't go into too much construction detail. Suffice it to say, it's just a very simple 1920s dressmaking technique. Yes, it's not actually a pattern per se, but rather a method of dress construction. The 1-hour dress, as described in the book, The 1-Hour Dress by Mary Brooks Picken, is a garment usually cut in one piece with a long seam running down each side. There is typically also some sort of waist shaping in the form of gathers or darts at the dropped waistline. It can be customized in a variety of ways and made in a variety of fabrics to suit every occasion. It is also a garment that is supposed to be so simple that you can make it in an hour. Never heard of anybody actually accomplishing it in an hour, but it is a very quick type of dress to make. So, sounds great, right? Simple, quick to make, very 1920s in style. Well, I have made a number of these dresses over the years, and while I do like them, they're not really my favorite. First of all, as I previously mentioned, they definitely take longer than an hour. Secondly, it's a hard style to make look flattering. Let's be honest, the 1920s isn't exactly known for its flattering silhouette to begin with. However, many historical garments had hidden shaping that this dress does not. And therefore this design, unlike some other 1920s dresses, tends to hang especially poorly on the body. You could, in theory, actually add in some additional darts or shaping to help remedy this problem. However, I've found the biggest factor in how attractive this dress is the material in which you make it. A super drapey fabric can actually make this dress rather flattering, especially if it's slightly sheer and worn with a slip underneath. Many 1920s dresses were sheer and were intended to be worn with a second layer, and I can really see why. The two layers just seem to flow better over curves and be less bulky looking than something stiffer and more opaque like cotton. The traditional side gathers on this style can also be rather finicky to get right, which is why I prefer the two-piece one-hour dress. Now this is basically the same as a one-hour dress, but with the skirt sewn separately. I find this version both easier to sew and cut out. There's also a lot more room in this particular variation for making alterations because you can raise or lower the skirt after it's cut out to better fit your body. This is especially handy if the dress just isn't sitting quite right. It can also be a fun option if you want to do some color blocking. It's a lot easier to piece the pieces together if you're not worried about it all being sort of one piece. I think I'd give the one-hour dress about a 6 out of 10, as it can produce a really nice dress, but it's a bit tricky to get quite right. Aw, the 3-hour sweater. This is the one that holds a special place in my heart. There's going to be a bit of a bias with this one because the 3-hour sweater, I don't think it was the first sweater I ever made, but it was definitely one of the first. So there's a bit of sentiment mixed in there. The 3-hour sweater is a circa 1930s knitting pattern. It's just something that somebody has uploaded online without stating the original source, so unfortunately I can't tell you where it came from, nor what year it was actually written, but it looks sort of mid to early 30s. Now, as I said, I'm rather biased towards this pattern, but I think it's rather cute. Although, as with many of these patterns that give a time estimate right in the name, I've never heard of anybody actually completing this sweater in 3 hours. Usually takes me about 10. I've heard some people doing it a little less than that, but 3 seems a bit of a stretch. Although it is very good for a knitting pattern. I'm sure any knitters out there know that you don't normally complete a sweater in 10 hours. It normally takes a lot more time than that. This is because it's worked on a combination of US size 8 and US size 15 needles, which is very unusual for a historical pattern. Not totally unheard of, but it's unusual, and bigger needles mean things work up quicker. The only problem with this bigger needle size is that sometimes the knitting can look a bit loose. I found the remedy for this is to use a DK weight yarn on the ribbing and the collar, and then a bulky weight yarn on the body. The only downside of this is it does tend to make the sweater a little bulky, which can perhaps be less than flattering. Although speaking of sizing, the thing I really like about this pattern is that it can fit a variety of sizes without altering the pattern. I've worn this sweater when I was about 10 pounds lighter than I am now and 40 pounds heavier. And the same sweater fit quite well either time. It also tends to be a relatively economical sweater. While it does use thicker yarns, which typically are more expensive than the thinner ones, it only uses about 500 yards, which 500 yards for a full sweater is pretty good. I've made a number of alterations to this pattern over the years as I've knit it. I think it's like 6 times. I've knit it quite a few. It was a particular favorite when I was a bit heavier than I am now. And when my thyroid was like not working and my weight kept fluctuating a lot. So I really like this pattern because it would stretch and shrink as I was. These alterations include adding a collar, using a different stitch pattern on the body, and dividing the front in 2 to make a cardigan. The cardigan is a particular favorite. I actually still wear that one all the time. I think I've made notes on pretty much all of these alterations on my Ravelry page, so I'll link that down below if anybody's interested in specifics. I think I'm going to rate this pattern a 7 out of 10, given its size-friendly nature, its economical use of yarn, and its truly a speedy construction. It's also like a really good sort of first sweater project, especially if you have some background in sewing. Some people find the construction a little complicated, but as somebody who's sewed to begin with, I never found putting it together all that difficult. It's, if you have sewing experience, it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so this next pattern is probably the only one on the list that doesn't have an exactly speedy name, but it is such a cool pattern that I just had to include it. This blouse is called the 6 o'clock chic blouse and is from circa 1938. Again, I'm not sure what the original source is. This is something that somebody has uploaded to, I think it was Flickr. I will link it down below. What I love about this pattern is that it is basically a large square that's sewn into a triangle, but with absolutely fabulous results. I love garments that are formed from simple shapes, but perhaps sewn together or draped in a way that makes them much, much more intricate and interesting. If you have a serger or a machine that does rolled hems, this makes it a particularly speedy project. However, you could even sew this by hand and it would still be relatively quick. Now, I did make a couple alterations when I made this pattern. There is apparently supposed to be a zip along the shoulder, but I just made my neck hole large enough to fit my head through, and I also machine stitched up the sides instead of bothering with the hand stitch detail. Although that is on my list of things to try in the future, I would love to make this blouse pattern again and try doing that. I think it would probably make it even more fabulous, if that's possible. This cut also minimizes fabric waste, which is fabulous because 1, wasting stuff is not good, and number 2, my scrap bins are overflowing. I don't need any more scraps. Minimize the scraps. Gonna make a quilt or something, I don't know. The only real downside to this pattern is that while it can be made in larger sizes, there is a limit to how large it can go. If you're on sort of the upper end of the plus size scale, this pattern's probably not going to work for you just due to the geometry. If you get the waist large enough, you're either going to end up with a blouse that's like way too short, or you're going to have sleeves that are way too long. So unfortunately, just due to the geometry, the shaping of this pattern, there is a limit to the sizes it can fit. However, it should give a relatively good range. As I said, it's really just the upper end of the plus size scale that you're gonna run into problems, which is unfortunate. I don't know if you made a diamond shape like this, that's negates some of the fabric saving and easiness of the pattern, but you possibly could make this style if you just did sort of like a diamond shape. That's not a very good example. My fingers aren't symmetrical enough. You know, like that. Despite this one disadvantage, I adore this design, and I think I'll give it a 8 out of 10. It should flatter the majority of body types, and it's just such a clever use of a square. That's my inner mathematician, like, screaming out, like, clever geometry. Oh, God, I love me some good geometry. Okay, stop talking about geometry. The last on my list for today is a sweater pattern called Made in a Few Days. This pattern makes a lovely cardigan and comes from a 1936 issue of the Sydney Morning Herald, which is available in digital format through Trove. Okay, so first off, this pattern took me a month and a half. Not a few days. Now, I'm a relatively slow knitter and I typically have more than one knitting project going on at one time. So that's not bad. A month and a half is relatively quick. A lot of patterns take like 6 months to a year. So not bad, but not a few days. It definitely took longer than promised. Now, I mostly picked this design to share because it's one of the lesser known vintage patterns. I think at the time of filming anyway, I'm pretty sure mine is the only project on Ravelry compared to something like the 3-hour sweater or the 2-hour sweater that has a a bunch of people that have made it. This is one that I think I'm the only one that has uploaded a project for anyway. I made this one back in 2018, and it is still one of my favorites. It's knit on size 10 needles, although I did go down a needle size to get gauge, and it works up relatively quickly. One thing to note, however, is this is not the best pattern for a beginner knitter, as some of the wording is a bit awkward, and there is definitely a mistake in this pattern. I managed to work it up and made some notes on my Ravelry page to assist anyone making this pattern. The problem is actually with the sleeves. I forget if it's the cast on number or the number of rows. There's some problem with the math on the sleeves. The shaping is okay, but there's definitely an error. I think something ended up halved or doubled. I always try to make notes on my Ravelry page if I'm knitting a historical pattern to help other people in the future that perhaps want to make the same pattern. There's no sense people making the same mistake over and over again. Let's all help each other. Overall, I'd still probably recommend this pattern, if only because I love the finished sweater so much. This was definitely a project knit rather than a process knit. However, if you do want a pattern that's a little less troublesome, this other cardigan pattern from 1936 is very similar in terms of gauge and construction. Because of this, it also works up very quickly. It might have actually been a better choice for this list, but I was trying to come up with patterns that had quick names, and this one does not. Mine's also looking a little raggy. I wear it all the time. I sleep in this thing. Very comfortable, very nice, but mine's looking a little scraggly. I think I'd give Made in a Few Days, I want to say 5 or 6 out of 10. I'm tempted towards 5 given the mistake in the original pattern, but then at the same time I love it so much that I want to give it a 6. We'll say 5.5. 5.5 out of 10. Now, before we go, I thought I'd throw in a few honorable mentions that didn't quite make the cut for the video. Such as the sweater I am wearing today. This is, what is it? It's the Cosy Cardigan in a Few Days from 1935. Now, I had thought of this being my last pattern, but unfortunately, I ran out of yarn and I never finished the sleeves, which is why it has short sleeves. So having not knit the full pattern, I felt a little weird recommending it because I have not tried the full pattern because I made an error. I made a boo-boo. I have a number of sweaters, especially from when I first started out, that have sleeves that are shorter than intended. Oh, there's also the attractive lightweight jumper from 1936. I have one of these. I am currently knitting another one. I can see it sitting over here. We're right beside my knitting space. So yeah, here. Oh, wow, I'm in a purple mood today, obviously. Feeling the purples at the moment, but it's got this really interesting stitch pattern and works up really quickly. Again, this one's not advertised as sort of a speedy pattern, but it is really quick to make up. I've done the front and I've done the back and I'm nearly done the sleeves. Very easy pattern. This one's a very good one for perhaps not like your first sweater, but maybe your second or your third sweater, because while it does have a stitch pattern, it's relatively easy to remember. And I find it gives like a really good result for the amount of effort that's put in. The effort is minimal. The shaping is minimal, but the fit and the look is like, and it's as I said, 30s. 30s had the best knitting patterns. The other pattern that I just want to mention is, what is it? Graceful evening wrap made right on the figure. I'm mostly including this one because I have footage that I shot like, I want to say like 2 years ago. This was going to be a New Year's video. I was going to make this beautiful cape and it was going to be an interesting sewing video for New Year's, and I didn't finish it in time. I didn't really like the cape. I didn't finish the video in time, and I've been holding on to this footage, not knowing what to do with it for like, maybe it's only been a year. It's been at least a year or two. And so that I can finally delete it and free up room on my memory cards, we're going to talk about it. This pattern is from a 1930 illustrated home sewing, of which I have a reprint copy. It says in the description that it takes under an hour to make, which was actually accurate for once. I think it took me about an hour and a half, but I was filming at the time, and filming makes everything take 10 times as long. So I think if I hadn't have been filming, I probably could have made it in under an hour. Although I did use my serger, I cheated a bit here. This is definitely a classic case of it looked better in the illustration. If I was going to rate this one, 4 out of 10. I've never worn it. It's just sitting in my sewing room and I'll probably cut it up and turn it into something else. If you have any suggestions that I have either forgotten or perhaps never even heard of, please leave me a comment down below. I personally would love some more quick pattern suggestions. That could include crochet. I know I haven't listed anything for crocheters as it's not... I do crochet, I'm just not proficient enough in it. But if you have any pattern suggestions, my fledgling crochet skills would love to tackle perhaps a very speedy historical sweater pattern. Well, I'm starting to lose my voice, so I think I'll end here. As always, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye! Okay, we're done. We are so done. This video is made possible through the generous support of my Patreon members. Thank you.